The first time I saw Marcus Webb get off that transport ship, I thought he was going to die within the cycle. No, seriously. Look at him. Small, soft, barely into what humans call adolescence, maybe 13 solar rotations old. His skin was this pale, peachy color that practically screamed easy prey to anyone with functioning optical sensors. He had brown hair that stuck up in weird directions like he'd been electrocuted, and these big green eyes that looked around the station with what I could only describe as terrified wonder. I'm Vex, by the way. Species? Corthani. We're the ones with 4 arms, gray, chitinous plating, and what humans charmingly refer to as anger management issues. I run security detail on Station Helios 7, which is basically a fancy way of saying I break up fights, arrest smugglers, and occasionally prevent diplomatic incidents from turning into actual bloodbaths. And this kid, this human kid, he was about to become my biggest headache in 3 decades of service. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered to my partner, Krill, as we watched the transport bay doors seal behind the new arrivals. They sent a juvenile? To a frontier station? What are the humans thinking? Krill, who belongs to a species that looks like a cross between a mantis and a dolphin, if that makes any sense, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. His file says he's part of the Colonial Youth Integration Program, supposed to help young humans adapt to multi-species environments before they reach maturity. Oh, wonderful. So we're a daycare now. We're an educational opportunity, Krill corrected, which is exactly the kind of thing Krill would say. The kid's guardian, a tall human woman named Dr. Patricia Reeves, had already signed the intake forms and was hustling Marcus toward the residential quarter. The boy kept looking around with those huge eyes, taking in everything. The Vraxian merchants with their 6 legs scuttling past, the floating Aethon who drifted by, like sentient jellyfish, the Corthani workers, like me, who towered over most species at nearly 3 meters tall. He looked absolutely petrified. Give him 2 days, I told Krill. 2 days before he's crying to go home. I was wrong, of course, but not in the way you'd think. The trouble started on day 4. See, Station Helios 7 isn't exactly what you'd call a nice neighborhood. We're positioned at the edge of council space, right where legitimate trade starts getting fuzzy around the edges. We get merchants, sure, but we also get mercenaries, bounty hunters, exiles, and the kind of people who find rules more like gentle suggestions. Most species here can handle themselves. Even the physically weaker ones usually have some kind of natural defense. Toxic skin, hypnotic abilities, pheromone warfare, that sort of thing. Humans have stubbornness and audacity, which doesn't count for much when someone twice your size wants your lunch credits. I was doing my usual patrol through the market sector when I heard the commotion. That particular kind of noise that means someone's about to have a very bad day. I pushed through the crowd, and there it was. The scene I'd been dreading since Marcus Webb arrived. 3 Draken juveniles, which I use loosely because Draken juveniles are still 2 meters of scaled muscle and bad attitude, had the human kid cornered against a vendor stall. Draken are reptilian, aggressive, and they have this charming cultural practice where establishing dominance early determines your social standing for life. Naturally, they'd spotted the softest target on the station. The leader, a green-scaled punk named Krath, was doing that thing Draken do where they expand their neck frills to look more intimidating. Your credits, Pinkskin. Unless you want to see if humans bleed the same color as Terran pigs. Marcus had his back pressed against the stall, a bag of what looked like educational supplies clutched to his chest. His face was pale, but here's the thing I noticed. His eyes weren't showing fear anymore. They were calculating, measuring, like he was doing math in his head, and I didn't like what the equation was telling him to do. I said, "Give us your credits." Krath stepped closer, his 2 buddies flanking him, cutting off any escape route. I was already moving forward, ready to break this up before it became a diplomatic incident, when something absolutely insane happened. A sound cut through the market chatter, a low, rumbling growl that made every species in the immediate vicinity go very, very quiet. It wasn't coming from the Draken. From behind a stack of cargo containers, something emerged. At first, I thought it was some kind of station fauna that had gotten loose from a cargo hold. It was low to the ground, maybe half a meter tall, with thick black and white fur, a flat head, and the kind of waddle that would be comical in any other context. Except for the eyes. Those small, dark eyes held the kind of cold, calculated violence that I'd only seen in apex predators who absolutely did not care about odds, consequences, or their own survival. The creature positioned itself directly between Marcus and the three Draken, and made that sound again. That growl that seemed to vibrate through your bones and trigger every prey instinct evolution had installed in your brain. What is that? Kroth's voice had gone up an octave. Marcus, and I will never forget this. Marcus looked at the creature, looked at the Draken, and smiled. Actually smiled. Then he spoke, and his voice was steady as a gunship's targeting system. That's Badger. He's from Earth, my home planet. A pet? One of Krath's friends squeaked. No, Marcus said slowly, and there was something in his tone that made me suddenly very aware that humans don't survive on their own planet by being weak. Badger's not really a pet. He's more of a friend. We found him when my mom was doing research in the African sectors. He'd been injured. We helped him. He decided to stick around. The creature, this Badger, took a step forward. The Draken took a step back. Fun fact about honey badgers, Marcus continued, his voice taking on this conversational quality that was somehow more terrifying than if he'd been screaming. They're mustelids, same family as wolverines, otters, and weasels. But honey badgers? They have this reputation on Earth. Another step forward, another step back. The crowd was growing. Nobody was intervening. We were all too fascinated by what was unfolding. See, honey badgers have this thing where they don't really care about size differences, or danger, or, frankly, whether they're going to survive an encounter. Marcus's smile got wider. There are documented cases of honey badgers fighting off lions. Plural. Lions that weigh over 200 kilos. They've been recorded raiding beehives, getting stung hundreds of times, and just not caring. They eat cobras, venomous snakes, that can drop an adult human in minutes. The badger just builds up immunity. Krath was looking distinctly uncomfortable now. His frills had deflated. But here's my favorite part, Marcus said, and his voice dropped to just above a whisper, which somehow made it carry further. When a honey badger gets in a fight, it has this defensive mechanism. Its skin is really loose and really tough, so if a predator grabs it, the badger can twist around inside its own skin and bite back. And honey badgers have one of the strongest bite forces for their size of any mammal on Earth. They can crack through tortoise shells. Badger, as if on cue, opened his mouth slightly. His teeth were small, but there were a lot of them, and they looked very, very sharp. So here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, and all pretense of fear was gone from his voice now. He stood up straighter, stepped forward, so he was beside Badger rather than behind him. You three are going to walk away. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to tell everyone else to leave me alone. And if you don't, he gestured down at Badger, who had started doing this little side-to-side motion with his head that was objectively adorable and subjectively nightmare fuel. Badger doesn't really understand concepts like proportional response or excessive force. He's about 12 kilos of pure spite and bad decisions, and he really, really doesn't like it when someone threatens me. Marcus tilted his head. So, do we have an understanding? Or do you want to test whether Draken scales are tougher than tortoise shells? The silence stretched for 3 full seconds. Then Krath and his friends turned and ran. Actually ran. Through the market, scattering vendors and shoppers, their tails tucked in that universal sign of I have made terrible life choices. The crowd erupted. Some species were laughing. Others were backing away from Marcus and his small, terrifying companion. A few were already recording no doubt to share across the station's networks. I walked over to Marcus, who was now kneeling down and scratching Badger behind the ears. The creature had completely transformed, making these soft chittering sounds and leaning into the boy's hand like he was the most harmless thing in the galaxy. Kid, I said carefully. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've seen in 30 years of security work. Marcus looked up at me, and there was that calculated expression again. Officer Vex, right? I read the station orientation materials. Intimidation and threat displays are acceptable conflict resolution under council guidelines, as long as no actual violence occurs. I blinked all 3 of my eyes in sequence. You did your homework. I always do my homework. He stood up, Badger waddling contentedly at his feet. And, for the record, Badger wouldn't have actually attacked them. Probably. He's very well trained. Probably? Krill had appeared beside me, staring at the honey. Badger with scientific fascination. You brought an apex predator from your death world to a civilian station, and you're not certain about its behavior parameters? Marcus shrugged. He's never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. That's good enough for Earth standards. Earth standards, I repeated flatly, are apparently insane. Oh, absolutely, Marcus agreed cheerfully. We're working on it. In the meantime, I should probably get to class. Dr. Reeves gets cranky when I'm late. He paused. Thanks for coming to help, though, even if you didn't need to. He walked off, Badger trotting beside him, leaving a wake of confused and intimidated aliens behind him. Krill turned to me. So, 2 days before he's crying to go home, you said? Shut up, Krill. By the end of that first week, Marcus Webb had become something of a station legend. The story had spread, naturally, growing in the telling. In some versions, Badger was 3 times his actual size. In others, Marcus had commanded a pack of Earth predators. The truth, as usual, was both more mundane and somehow more impressive. The Draken juveniles gave him a wide berth. So did most of the other species who might have seen a young human as an easy mark. Word got around, the soft-looking pink skin from Earth had teeth. Or, more accurately, had a friend with teeth. I started noticing Marcus around the station during my patrols. He was always polite, always curious, always asking questions. He'd stop to talk to vendors, learning about their home worlds. He'd help Krill catalog new species in the database. He even started attending some of the multi-species sporting events, which took guts considering he was smaller and weaker than 90% of the participants. And everywhere Marcus went, Badger followed. The little creature became a fixture on the station, recognized by everyone. Most species learned to give him respectful distance. A few brave souls would offer treats, which Badger would accept with the regal air of a monarch receiving tribute. It was weird, I'll admit, but it worked. The kid was adapting. Then came the incident that proved Marcus Webb wasn't just surviving on Station Helios 7. He was about to become essential to it. 3 weeks after his arrival, the Crimson Claw docked. Now, the Crimson Claw was a mercenary vessel, registered out of the outer fringe, crewed by some of the nastiest pieces of work you'd find outside of a maximum security detention center. They ran protection rackets, mostly. Ship escorts through dangerous territory, station security for places that couldn't afford council oversight, that sort of thing. Legal, technically, but just barely. Their captain was a Vroth named Scar, and Vroth are not pleasant at the best of times. They're bipedal, insectoid, with compound eyes and mandibles that can shear through most organic materials. Scar was particularly large for his species, standing nearly as tall as me, with scars on his carapace that told stories that a fight survived. He came onto my station with 6 of his crew, all armed, all looking for trouble in that specific way that mercenaries do when they're bored and looking for entertainment. I intercepted them at the market sector entrance. Scar didn't expect the Crimson Claw this cycle. He clicked his mandibles in what might have been a laugh. Vex, still playing security guard for these soft merchants? You should join a real crew. Your combat skills are wasted here. My combat skills are employed keeping people like you from causing problems on my station. Your station? He leaned in close. Council says this is neutral territory, which means we can conduct business here. Legal business. As long as it stays legal. Oh, it will. His eyes focused on something behind me, and his mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among Vroth. Is that a human juvenile? I turned. Marcus was crossing the market square, Badger at his heels, carrying what looked like groceries for Dr. Reeves. He hadn't noticed Scar yet. Leave the kid alone, I said quietly. Why would I bother a kid? Scar's tone was all innocence, which meant he was planning something awful. I'm just curious. Never seen a human that young off Terra before. Brave of his guardians to bring him out here. He started walking toward Marcus. I moved to follow, but 2 of Scar's crew stepped in my way. Not touching me, not threatening me, just blocking. Legal, technically, but we all knew what they were doing. Scar approached Marcus with that predatory gait that Vroth use when they're hunting. The boy noticed, stopped, and I saw his hand drop to rest on Badger's head. The honey badger's ears perked up. "Human child," Scar said loudly, drawing attention from the entire market. "I've heard stories about you, about your little pet." "He's not a pet," Marcus said calmly. "And I'm busy. Excuse me." He tried to walk around Scar. The mercenary sidestepped, blocking his path. "I'm not done talking," Scar said, and there was an edge to his voice now. "See, I don't like rumors. Bad for business. So I thought I'd verify personally whether this earth creature is really as dangerous as people say." The market had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. I was still trying to push past Scar's crew, but they'd locked arms now, and moving them would require violence that would get me suspended from duty. Marcus looked up at Scar, and I saw something flash across the kid's face. Not fear. Anger. Cold, controlled anger. "You want to verify?" Marcus asked softly. "Okay, but I should warn you, Badger's had a long day. He's cranky. And when he's cranky, he gets bitey." "I'm terrified," Scar said mockingly. He reached down toward Badger. What happened next occurred in about 3 seconds, but I swear it felt like watching it in slow motion. Badger didn't wait for Scar's claw to make contact. The honey badger exploded into motion with a speed that defied his waddle walk appearance. He launched himself at Scar's extended arm, twisted in midair with the kind of aerial control you'd expect from a species that spent millennia perfecting the art of not caring about physics, and latched onto the mercenary's forearm with claws and teeth. Scar screamed. Actually screamed. This towering mass of chitin and muscle and bad decisions let out a sound that would haunt my auditory sensors for cycles to come. But here's where it got interesting. Badger wasn't just biting. He was climbing, using Scar's arm like a ladder, scrabbling up toward the Vroth's thorax, claws digging into gaps in the carapace plating, making sounds that can only be described as profoundly offended growling. "Get it off. Get it off me." Scar was spinning, trying to shake Badger loose, but the honey badger had locked on like a guided missile that had found its target and decided to make a permanent residence there. Marcus hadn't moved. He stood there, groceries still in his arms, watching with an expression of mild concern. Not for Scar, for Badger. "You really shouldn't have done that," Marcus said over Scar's continued screaming. "I told you he was cranky." Scar's crew had released me, rushing to help their captain, but none of them seemed eager to actually grab the furry ball of rage currently ascending Scar's body, like he was mounting an assault on a heavily fortified position, which, technically, he was. "Tranquilizer," one of them shouted. "Someone get a tranquilizer." "Won't work," Marcus called out helpfully. "Honey badgers have exceptionally high resistance to toxins and sedatives. It's an evolutionary adaptation from eating venomous snakes. You'd need about 5 times the normal dose, and by the time it kicked in, Badger would have already expressed his feelings pretty thoroughly." Badger had reached Scar's shoulder now and was doing this thing where he'd latch onto a piece of carapace with his teeth, plant his back legs, and pull. Hard. I heard cracking sounds. Pieces of Scar's armor plating were coming loose. "Make it stop." Scar had fallen to his knees now, trying desperately to protect his softer neck joints. "Badger," Marcus said, and his voice cut through the chaos like a plasma blade through butter. "Badger, that's enough. Come here, buddy." The honey badger stopped immediately, just froze in place, one paw raised, teeth still gripping a piece of carapace. Then he released, dropped to the ground with surprising grace, and trotted back to Marcus like nothing had happened. The boy reached into his grocery bag, pulled out what looked like a dried meat strip, and fed it to Badger, who accepted it with the satisfied air of someone who'd just completed a job well done. Scar collapsed fully onto the ground, breathing heavily, his carapace sporting several new ventilation holes and missing chunks. Green blood seeped from the gaps. His crew surrounded him, checking for serious damage. I finally made it through the crowd to Marcus. "Kid, explain." Now, Marcus looked up at me with those big green eyes, and I swear there was a hint of mischief in them. He reached for Badger without permission. That's considered threatening behavior. Badger defended himself. It's all in the station rules about self-defense. Section 7. Subsection 4. Paragraph 2 specifically addresses, quote, Proportional response to perceived physical threats against registered companions. You memorized the station regulations? I told you. I do my homework. He glanced at Scar, who was being helped to his feet by his crew. Is he going to be okay? Badger usually knows when to stop before things get permanently damaged. Usually, I repeated, feeling my earlier conversation with Krill echoing in my memory. 97% success rate, Marcus said cheerfully. Very reliable. Scar was upright now, leaning heavily on two of his crew members. His compound eyes focused on Marcus with an expression that would have made most species run for their lives. But there was something else there too. Something like grudging respect mixed with healthy fear. You, Scar rasped, his voice damaged from screaming. That creature is a menace. That creature, Marcus corrected, is a legally registered companion animal with full documentation from Earth's Wildlife Transit Authority. He's had all his vaccinations, passed his behavioral assessments, and is certified for multi-species environments. Would you like to see his paperwork? I keep copies on my datapad for situations exactly like this. The market had erupted into noise now. Some species were laughing openly. Others were placing bets on whether Scar would retaliate. A few enterprising vendors had already started selling recordings of the incident. Scar straightened up as much as his damaged carapace would allow. He looked at Marcus for a long moment, then at Badger, who was contentedly finishing his treat and licking his paws. How much? Scar asked suddenly. Excuse me? Marcus blinked. How much for the creature? Name your price. An animal with that kind of combat efficiency, that fearlessness, that would be invaluable for ship security. He's not for sale, Marcus said flatly, and all the cheerfulness dropped from his voice. Badger's my friend. You don't sell your friends. Everything has a price, human. Not everything. Marcus shifted the groceries in his arms. And even if I wanted to sell him, which I don't, it wouldn't work. Honey badgers bond with specific individuals. Take him away from me, and he'd probably tear through your ship's hull trying to get back. Or just tear through your crew. Either way, bad investment for you. Scar studied the boy for another long moment, then did something I didn't expect. He laughed. It was a painful, wheezing sound given his damaged vocal apparatus, but it was genuine. You've got spine, human child. More than most adults I've met. He straightened further, wincing. My crew and I will be leaving now. For medical attention. But I'll remember this. And you. Great, Marcus said brightly. Try not to grab strange animals next time. It's generally a bad idea across most species. Scar and his crew limped away toward the medical bay, leaving a trail of green blood drops and shattered dignity. The crowd slowly dispersed, already spreading the story across the station's communication networks. I looked down at Marcus, who had gone back to his calm, slightly nervous demeanor. Like the past 5 minutes hadn't just happened. Like he hadn't just humiliated one of the most dangerous mercenaries in the sector using a 12-kilo mammal and an encyclopedic knowledge of station regulations. You planned that, I said. It wasn't a question. Marcus adjusted his grip on the groceries. I didn't plan for him to grab Badger. But I did read about Vroth psychology in the cultural database. They respect strength and tactical thinking. Showing fear would have made things worse. Demonstrating capability establishes boundaries. He paused. Did I do something wrong? Because if I violated any actual regulations, I can file an incident report and accept whatever penalties. No, I cut him off. You didn't do anything wrong. Technically. But kid, you just made an enemy. Scar might have laughed it off, but mercenaries have long memories. Then he'll remember not to mess with humans, Marcus said simply. Or their friends. That seems like useful information for him to have. I couldn't argue with that logic. Didn't want to. Really. Over the next few weeks, something shifted on station Helios 7. Marcus wasn't just the human kid anymore. He'd become something else. A symbol, maybe. Proof that being small didn't mean being weak. That intelligence and preparation could compensate for physical disadvantages. Other juveniles started approaching him. Young Draken, Vraxian hatchlings, even a few Aethon spawns who normally didn't interact with solid mass species. They asked him questions. How did he train Badger? How did he stay calm under pressure? How did he know all those regulations? Marcus answered every question patiently, always willing to share what he knew. He started an informal study group in one of the station's common areas, teaching other young beings about Earth biology, human history, practical conflict resolution. Dr. Reeves approved it as part of his educational program, and suddenly my security job got a lot easier because the juvenile population was spending their time learning instead of causing trouble. Badger became a station mascot of sorts. Vendors would save treats for him. Engineers would stop to scratch his ears. Even the normally aloof Corthani workers developed a fondness for the little creature who absolutely refused to be intimidated by anything. But the real test came about 6 weeks after Marcus arrived. There was a malfunction in the station's environmental controls. Nothing catastrophic, but the life support system for Sector 4 started failing, and Sector 4 housed primarily methane-breathing species. They had maybe 30 minutes before atmospheric conditions became lethal. I was coordinating the evacuation with Krill when Marcus appeared at the command center, Badger at his heels as always. "Officer Vex, I think I can help." I was too busy routing emergency teams to brush him off properly. "Not now, kid. This is serious." "I know. That's why I'm here." He pulled out his datapad, showing me a schematic. "I've been studying the station layout. There's a manual override for the environmental controls in the maintenance tunnels, but they're too small for adult Corthani or most other species to access quickly." Krill clicked his mandibles. "The tunnels were designed for maintenance drones, not biological entities." "Right, but they're big enough for me, and I've mapped the route. If someone tells me which systems to reset, I can get there in under 10 minutes. Marcus looked at me with absolute certainty. I can do this. Every instinct I had screamed that sending a 13-year-old human into the maintenance tunnels during an emergency was a terrible idea. But the math was simple. We had limited time, limited options, and the kid was right. He could fit where others couldn't. Fine. But you're taking a comm unit. You're following Krill's instructions exactly. And if anything goes wrong, you abort immediately. Understood? Yes, sir. Marcus was already moving toward the tunnel access hatch. And Marcus? I called after him. Be careful. He flashed me that smile, the one that was equal parts confidence and slight terror. Always am. Then he and Badger disappeared into the maintenance tunnels. The next 12 minutes were the longest of my career. I listened to Marcus's breathing over the comm, heard him navigating through tight spaces, asking Krill for clarification on technical terms, working through the override sequence with the kind of focused determination that I'd only seen in trained emergency responders. Okay. Marcus's voice crackled through the comm. I'm at the junction. I see the override panel. It's really old. And covered in some kind of organic growth. That would be biofilm accumulation, Krill explained. You'll need to clear it before accessing the controls. Right. Give me a second. There was a pause. Then, Badger, no. That's not food. I don't care if it smells interesting. Badger. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Even in an emergency, the honey badger had priorities. Okay, panel's clear. I see 3 switches and 2 control crystals. Which ones do I need to manipulate? Krill walked him through the sequence. Flip this switch. Wait for the indicator light. Rotate the left crystal clockwise. More instructions, each one crucial, each one potentially disastrous if executed incorrectly. Marcus followed every direction perfectly. Done, he said finally. Systems showing green across the board. Is that right? I checked my monitors. Atmospheric readings in Sector 4 were stabilizing. Life support was coming back online. The methane breathers were safe. That's right, kid. You did it. Now get back here before Dr. Reeves finds out I sent you into the tunnels and decides to space me. Marcus's laugh echoed through the comm. On my way. Badger found something interesting though. Some kind of nest? There are these small furry things that look kind of like, don't touch them. Krill and I shouted simultaneously. Wasn't planning to. Just observing. They're actually pretty cute. Heading back now. When Marcus emerged from the maintenance tunnels 15 minutes later, covered in dust and biofilm residue, with Badger looking equally disheveled, Dr. Reeves was waiting. She took one look at her charge, took one look at me, and I prepared for the lecture of my life. Instead, she hugged Marcus tightly. You scared me half to death. Sorry, Dr. Reeves. But I helped save people. I know. I'm proud of you. And also grounding you for a week for taking unnecessary risks. That's fair. Marcus agreed. The story spread, naturally. The human juvenile who'd crawled through dangerous maintenance tunnels to save a sector full of methane breathers. Combined with his previous exploits, Marcus Webb was now officially a station hero. The methane-breathing community in Sector 4 threw a celebration in his honor. They couldn't attend personally due to atmospheric incompatibility, but they sent gifts, messages of gratitude, and formal commendations to the council. Marcus accepted everything with his characteristic mixture of pride and embarrassment. But the real impact came later, when I was doing my evening patrol and overheard a conversation between 3 juvenile Draken, the same 3 who tried to shake Marcus down on his 4th day. Did you hear about the human? One was saying. Saved an entire sector. Not surprised, Krath replied. That's right, Krath. The leader who'd run away from Badger. Humans are tough. Different kind of tough than us, but tough. Think he'd teach us some of that Earth stuff? The regulations and the planning and everything? Probably. He's been teaching everyone else. They walked off discussing study schedules, and I realized something profound had happened. Marcus hadn't just adapted to Station Helios 7, he'd changed it. Made it better. Showed everyone that cooperation and intelligence could achieve things that strength alone couldn't. I found Marcus later that evening in his quarters, studying some advanced engineering texts while Badger snoozed on a cushion nearby. Dr. Reeves had stepped out, leaving the boy alone with his thoughts. Can I come in, kid? He looked up, surprised. Of course, Officer Vex. Is something wrong? No. I just wanted to say something. I settled into a chair that creaked under my weight. When you first arrived, I gave you 2 days before you'd be crying to go home. Marcus grinned. I heard about that, Krill told me. Of course he did. Remind me to reassign him to waste processing duty. I leaned forward. But seriously, you proved me wrong. You proved a lot of people wrong. You didn't just survive here. You thrived. And you made this station better in the process. I had help, Marcus said quietly. You and Krill looked out for me. The vendors were patient when I asked stupid questions. And Badger. He glanced at the sleeping honey badger. Badger's always been there when I needed him. About that. Your friend with the loose skin and bad attitude. Where did you really find him? Marcus's expression turned thoughtful. My mom does xenobiology research. We were stationed in Africa for a year when I was 11. Found Badger caught in an old poacher's trap. His leg was badly injured. Mom said we should report it to wildlife services and let them handle it, but he shrugged. I couldn't leave him. So I stayed with him while Mom got help. Took 3 hours. I just sat there, talking to him, keeping him calm. And when the wildlife team arrived, Badger wouldn't let anyone near him except me. So he bonded with you. Yeah. The team said his leg was too damaged for him to survive in the wild. They were going to euthanize him. Mom pulled some strings, got him cleared for rehabilitation and eventual adoption. Took a year of physical therapy, but Badger's stubborn. He recovered. And when we got reassigned off Earth, Mom managed to get him certified as my emotional support animal. Marcus smiled. Best friend I've ever had. Even though he's 12 kilos of concentrated violence, especially because of that. Badger doesn't pretend to be something he's not. He's exactly who he is, all the time. Fearless, loyal, a little bit crazy. I admire that. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Badger sleep and twitch through whatever dreams honey badgers have. You know what the funny thing is? Marcus said suddenly. Everyone thinks Earth is this death, the world, right? Super dangerous, everything trying to kill you. Humans are crazy for surviving there. But honestly, most of Earth is beautiful, peaceful. The dangerous parts exist, sure, but they're not the whole story. So what is the whole story? That humans learn to adapt. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the most venomous, but we're persistent, creative. We work together. And when something threatens us or the people we care about, he gestured at Badger, we find a way to fight back. Even if that way is befriending the creatures that everyone else is scared of. That's a pretty mature perspective for a 13-year-old. I'm almost 14, Marcus corrected with mock indignation. Then his expression softened. But yeah, I've had to grow up a little faster than most kids, moving between stations, adapting to new cultures, making friends across species lines. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I get to see things most humans never will, meet people from across the galaxy, learn about civilizations thousands of years older than mine, and occasionally terrify mercenaries with your pocket-sized apex predator. That's just a bonus. Marcus laughed. I stood to leave, but paused at the door. One more thing, kid. You ever think about what you want to do when you grow up? Marcus considered the question seriously. I think I'd like to do what you do. Security work. Helping keep people safe. Making sure everyone gets treated fairly, regardless of species or size or how scary they look. He smiled. Plus, I'm really good at memorizing regulations. You'd be great at it, I told him honestly. But finish school first, and maybe let Dr. Reeves sleep without worrying about you crawling through maintenance tunnels. Deal. 3 months later, I was finishing up reports in my office when Krill burst in, mandibles clicking excitedly. You need to see this, right now. He pulled up a video on his datapad. It showed the docking bay, where a massive diplomatic vessel was arriving. The kind of ship that carried council representatives and important dignitaries. As I watched, the airlock opened, and out stepped Ambassador Thex, a high-ranking Vroth official. And right beside her, looking tiny in comparison, was Marcus Webb. What is that kid doing with a council ambassador? I demanded. Watch, Krill said. The video continued. Marcus was clearly giving Ambassador Thex a tour of the station, pointing out various sectors, introducing her to residents. And everywhere they went, being stopped to greet Marcus. Not the ambassador. Marcus. He'd shake hands, exchange pleasantries, make introductions. The ambassador seemed genuinely impressed. There's more, Krill said, switching to another feed. This showed Marcus in what looked like a council chamber, standing at a podium, addressing a full assembly. Badger sat calmly beside him. Is he testifying? I asked, incredulous. Better. He's proposing. Krill enhanced the audio. Marcus's voice came through clearly. In conclusion, establishing formalized youth integration programs across all council stations would benefit everyone involved. Young beings learn cooperation and cultural understanding early. Stations gain valuable perspectives and fresh ideas. And we build a generation that sees diversity as strength, not threat. Thank you for your consideration. The assembly erupted in applause. Ambassador Thex stood, adding her endorsement. When did this happen? I asked. 2 days ago. It's already been approved. They're calling it the Webb Initiative. Krill's mandibles spread in his version of a smile. Our little human troublemaker just changed council policy. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. The kid who I'd given 2 days to survive had just influenced galactic diplomacy, using the same skills he demonstrated here. Preparation, intelligence, and the courage to stand up when it mattered. We should probably send a congratulatory message, Krill suggested. Already composing it, I replied. And Krill? Next time I tell you how long someone will last on this station? Yes? Remind me that I'm absolutely terrible at predictions. Marcus returned to Station Helios 7 a week later, and life went back to its normal rhythm. He attended classes, helped with his study groups, and patrolled the corridors with Badger, now an official station mascot with his own identification badge. But things had changed. The Webb Initiative was being implemented across council space. Young beings from dozens of species were being placed in multicultural environments, learning cooperation and understanding. And at the center of it all was a 13-year-old, almost 14-year-old human who'd proven that being small didn't mean being insignificant. I still see Marcus around the station most days. He's taller now, more confident, but still fundamentally the same kid who arrived scared and determined 3 months ago. We talk sometimes about security work, about the future, about the crazy situations he somehow keeps finding himself in. And I've learned something important from Marcus Webb and his honey badger companion, something that I think the whole galaxy is slowly learning. Humans are tough, not because they're physically powerful or naturally dangerous, but because they refuse to accept that size determines worth. They adapt, they persist, they befriend the unlikeliest allies, and they change the rules when the rules don't make sense. They're tough because they choose to be. And that's the most terrifying and inspiring kind of strength there is. Last week, I saw Krath and his friends sitting with Marcus in the common area, all of them working on homework together. The Draken juvenile who'd tried to shake Marcus down was now asking him for help with mathematics. Marcus was patiently explaining the concepts while Badger snoozed under the table, occasionally snoring in a way that made everyone laugh. It was such an ordinary scene. And that's what made it extraordinary. Because 6 months ago, that scene would have been impossible. The species wouldn't have mixed. The juveniles would have maintained their hierarchies and territories. Nobody would have learned anything except how to intimidate and be intimidated. Now we have hope. And it came wrapped in a small package from Earth, accompanied by 12 kilos of fearless friendship. I wouldn't have believed it if someone had told me this story. But I lived it, watched it unfold, saw a single determined kid with an unusual companion change an entire station, and then influence policy across galactic civilization. So yeah, humans are tough. But more importantly, humans are teachers. They show us what's possible when you refuse to let circumstances define your limitations. And that's a lesson worth learning, no matter what species you are.